for that big audience we have tuning in remotely. Have we been tracking our likes?
I was wondering.
You know, do we get comments? Is there some kind of social media feedback element to this?
They are definitely being watched. As I've had people remark. All right, we will bring the meeting to order for our first meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Rollingwood for 2020. Happy New Year, everybody. Why don't we go ahead and start a roll call? Jamil, if you don't mind starting us off.
Jamil Allen.
Andy Rodnick.
Jordan Scott.
Brian Nash.
Josh McKay.
All right, and why don't you go ahead and give your name for the record?
Sarah Griffin.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. All right, are there any public comments for items that are not currently on our agenda? People who would like to speak on items that we're not discussing today? Please. And please give your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy, and this is my husband Ed, Cindy and Ed Lee from 405 Vale Street. We're here today to request the Planning and Zoning Commission consider a possible combination of code changes and or variances as they relate to some plans that we have, hopefully to build an accessory building on our property at 405 Vale Street. We spoke briefly during a meeting last April of 2019 and have followed subsequent discussions on the topic, but most of those discussions seem to have focused on implications of accessory buildings for short-term rentals. We have no intention of building or furnishing out this building for short-term rental use. Our lot at 405 Vale is almost a half acre, and with the placement and size of the home, the rear yard is quite large and open. This was a key criteria when we were looking for a home in Rollingwood over the course of several years, actually, and a big reason why we chose to purchase the home in 2013. Not only have we always valued a large open backyard for our kids and our dogs to play in, but we immediately had the vision that this was the property that would perfectly accommodate our idea to build a woodworking shop that we talked about and dreamed about for several years prior. The size of the lot would easily fit a moderate-sized workshop while still maintaining the large open yard that we desired. In 2017, we finally were in a position to begin pursuing plans for the woodshop and took the steps to hire an architect and complete a topographic survey. Upon embarking on these plans, however, we quickly realized that a number of items in the building code placed significant restrictions on what would be possible, to the point we considered completely abandoning our plans. We even looked into renting a storage space or leasing a commercial space for our hobby plans. But this just didn't seem to make sense. So we're back here to request consideration for our particular situation and potentially some modifications that have also impacted other Rollingwood homeowners. Ed and I understand and value the intent of the code to maintain the aesthetic and the culture of the city. With this in mind, we know that Rollingwood's code now expressly prohibits the short-term rentals, and at the same time, other codes limit the usage of design buildings seemingly as a proxy to prevent that short-term rental usage. There's code that discusses the aesthetics in terms of the size of the lots, the homes, the height. And so when it comes to those accessory buildings, those restrictions have resulted in people trying to circumvent the code to achieve what they want to. And it doesn't always seem that that really aligns with the intent of the code at its heart. So if I may just take a minute before concluding to talk about our specific proposed plans. The code, as you know, talks about the one story, not higher than the main building, and not to exceed 500 square feet. Unfortunately, our plans to accommodate the equipment that we have and a workable space would be more than 500 square feet. We're looking at 640 square feet and hopefully having a loft area for some storage, which would almost double that space. Right out of the gate, we wouldn't be able to do this building. But however, given the nature of the code and the intent, our yard, there's a significant slope in the backyard, so the height of the building would not nearly match our house at all, even at that 1.5 to 2 stories. It still leaves quite a large open space in the yard, and quite frankly, it allows us to get back our garage to actually park cars, and we have a room in our house that has towering shelves of sharp woodworking equipment that should be used for a kid's play space. In addition to that, one other thing, there are some restrictions on the side lots and the easements Our home happens to back up to a wooded area. It's the last street, Vale, backs up to a wooded area and Zilker Clubhouse Road. So we wouldn't be impacting the other homes by building in the rear portion of our lot. And our neighbors seem to not have an issue. We've talked with them about our plans. So we hope you might consider opening up discussion on those accessory buildings and what we have in mind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just a reminder to the commission and to the audience, because we haven't noticed on this subject, we can't really discuss it, but we appreciate you bringing it up. Is there anything else y'all would like to say?
Just that, I remember last year we had talked about adjustments to the code, just over this topic. I don't know whether those discussions had actually gone anywhere. Supposedly it was gonna be in committee, but I don't know what happened since then, so this is why we're coming today.
Great.
It's popped up a couple times, I think, in the course of our discussions, and we've actually invited the public to kind of give us some feedback about what they think should happen for accessory buildings. So this is very appropriate and appreciated to have you guys come in and kind of talk about where you guys see like the potential for this and what the sort of reasons why somebody thinks we need to revisit it. So it's very helpful.
Well, I mean, right now we have like, under the current code, I could build like a covered hallway that zigzags over my lot and that would adhere to the code. But it just seems kind of disingenuous, actually, if necessary, we have existing, we've existingly codified that we can't use the space for short-term rentals. So if we can somehow enforce that portion and maybe make readjustments to the code, that might be helpful for people trying to make plans for accessory buildings.
Yeah, no, that's, I don't know if we've heard a lot of recent feedback on sort of the underpinning to the accessory building challenge. I have heard anecdotally that the short-term rental aspect is one part of why there was a motivation, but I think it actually was borne out prior to even short-term rentals being a thing.
Yep.
So I think it's not just short-term rentals that are the concern, but that there are, that at least at one time, people did not want there to be more than one building. And so they limited, the only additional building you could do was this accessory building, and then put in these sort of restrictions on that, meaning 500 square feet and single story and no plumbing, I think, is another part of it. And so we have kind of talked about in general, and it's not an action item we can take up today because there hasn't been notice on it, but one of the things we've talked about is this something that we should revisit, and should we see if the public is still interested in having that kind of a restriction? And so it's great to have someone like you guys showing up to talk about, no, we don't think there's a reason to have it. The covered walkway aspect that you brought up is pretty interesting, and it is something that we've talked about for over a year now.
It's not legit.
Which is, it's spun out in a couple of different things. We jokingly refer to it as the detached and attached structure issue.
I'd like to call the question on this topic now.
And we joke about it because it's come up a lot, and so we've kind of had to deal with it quite a bit.
Is there a second?
Anyway, the bottom line is, the state of it is that we've kind of talked about revisiting it, and I do think there is a subcommittee that's looking into it, but
So,
we haven't.
and for tonight, an appropriate action would be to place it on a future agenda since it's not posted for this evening, but
Correct.
further discussion really is a bit
We're done.
off the agenda.
Yeah, I was just updating
Thank you
them
so
on what
much.
it had
Yeah,
before.
thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
All right, why don't we move on to our consent agenda, which involves the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody want to pull that for any reason to modify the minutes? Then I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda. Is anybody have that motion?
Also move.
Thank you. Is there a second? All right, thank you, Amy, for moving, and Brian for seconding. Any discussion on the motion? I have a quick point of order. Do we want to clarify who abstains?
I think we do, don't we? Because normally, I had always run nonprofit board meetings that if you weren't there, you abstain. If you were there, you vote on the minutes.
Sure.
I don't know how our
Do you have
city
any
attorney feels
take
about
on that?
You are not required to abstain on minutes if you weren't at a meeting, but it's your choice. I said, you're
You
not
could always
required to
watch the
abstain.
meeting and
Yeah.
say, no, that's not what I saw. I saw something else. You know what I
If
mean?
I'm having trouble sleeping, I will be.
We're huge in the 2 a.m. hour.
Yeah.
So you're not required to abstain. You can. But are we required to identify who abstains and who votes for
Well,
abstentions?
typically on minutes, you wouldn't per se, but
Okay.
possibly on an agenda item where you might have a conflict of interest, and that's why you're
Then
abstaining.
you would want to abstain.
Who it was noted for that reason.
Okay.
So
But just
there's-
generally, if you weren't there and aren't sure what happened and you abstained, it just, okay. That's it. All right. I'll call the vote then. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Consent agenda is done. We are now going to move into a public hearing at 6:12 regarding a request to amend the city's code of ordinances to expressly include allowing for banks in our C2 zoning district. Would anybody from the public like to speak on this topic? All right, the chair would like to recognize former mayor Tom Farrell.
Tom Farrell, 3223 Park Hills Drive. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I am opposed to this motion that we have that do this for a couple of reasons on that. One, we've got 5 banks in Rollingwood that are there, and I think that's probably enough. One of the things that we have done in the city's government since the 1990s and even before that is try to get as much retail sales tax as we can. Now, we get audited every year by our auditor, and we also get audited by our bond people that look at this. And one of the comments our bond people continuously make is, city's in great shape. The only thing that they comment on is that we don't have enough sales tax or alternative income coming in other than our ad valorem tax. So we've been pushing for a long time to try to get more retail space that we can use in Rollingwood. And we've got some, we started on plans years ago, and I think we're still working on to do that. 1998, we did our first corridor study of B Caves Road.
I'll point out that study is in y'all's packet.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And we recently completed an additional study on the demographics of Rollingwood that we can look at, that we can give to our prospective retail users on that. Now, part of the deal is we've made is when we did that study, we wanted to try to figure out what our best uses were. When we did that, banks and several other uses were still excluded and required, and there's nothing to prevent a bank, savings loan, or whatever, from applying for a specific location and asking for a special use permit to use that. Now, this is carte blanche on all of our C2 zoning. Remember, we only have 2 zonings on this for the most part in Rollingwood. There's a few minor ones, but we've got, all our commercial is C2. And then we have residential. And we do have some governmental and park and church, but that's about it on that. So we've got that, and we've got 5 banks that we use right now. One of those dates back to the 70s. The other 4 were probably came in, they've changed their names a couple times, but those sites came in 2000, 2001 or so. And they came in as part of the PUDs, the Mira Vista PUD and the Rollingwood Town Center PUD, the Endeavor buildings on that, as how we got those. Now, that involved months and months, 6 months, Mike, of negotiations on each one of those. Yeah, a year probably, on each one of those as to what uses were going to come in on that. We wore poor Tom Tercel out, I think, on that, but he got, I think he got a project that he could live with. So we've been working on a lot of different little plans to come up with how to expand our footprint on residential, on retail. One of which involves utilizing our 5 acres that we own off of Edgegrove Drive for parking if that area is ever redeveloped. to where we could have almost 12 acres of retail there by channelizing the creek and raising that a little bit. We actually did the engineering on channelizing the creek right there, so that would do that. We're not proposing that we buy the property or do anything. This is where we would tee it up for developers to be able to do that, which I think is both a proper and a sound way for the city to handle situations like that. But our banks are, we have to have them. We've got 5, but they do cost each of us potentially money, and each citizen in Rollingwood gets cost money by putting that in there for the lack of income that we might get from our retail. We're not going to get retail if we just don't have a big enough footprint to do that on there. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, and if you'd like, I can give you a history on each one of the special use permits we have on that. Thank y'all. Amy?
Tom, it seems to me that basically banks occupying space is the same as somebody having an office, in terms of our tax income. Is that fairly accurate?
It is. There is an extra cost to the city, and it's a you could argue it either way, but there is an extra cost that I used to look at as to the city for financial institutions. We have, John Dillinger, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. We do have some crime that we have with banks. You may remember that for years we tried not to have any M16s, M15s with our police because we're a small area. We just don't want those kind of things shot in this city. But because of the incident that occurred in LA and some incidents that occurred similarly in Austin, it was not appropriate for us not to allow our police to be armed for that. But that's because of the banks on that. We have an extra cost of policing for banks that we may not have for an office space on that. And it is a lost opportunity. Most of our office space is not going to be suitable for retail on that. So it's just but if we go all the way on C2, that puts everything in Rollingwood in that category on that. Did I answer that
I think
appropriately?
you did. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank y'all very much, and I appreciate y'all's service.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Any additional public comments? Is this your time to speak in favor or in opposition from the public? What's pardon? Yeah, you can certainly use this time to speak.
This is your time.
We may have direct questions for you when we go into adjourn back into regular session, but right now this is a great chance for you to present what you'd like to do.
Well, and my name is William Milligan. I'm with the Highline Group, design builder and owner's rep for Vista Bank. Have been on several projects. Vista Bank is a 106-year-old community bank. They're originally based out of Lubbock, Texas. They're actually currently over off of 35 and Jefferson and 35th Street in Austin. So they're just their bank president is actually a very connected individual in Westlake Hills. He knows this area really well. From my conversations with him, and to go back to what Tom's comment was, yes, he's absolutely right. This area needs more retail. I mean, that is part of what happens when you're a city and you're a growing city, and you have we'll say a very small area that's allotted for commercial, and you're really kind of landlocked. I mean, that's really all you have. But we, as we agree that you do need more retail, we are looking at this particular lot here, and we'll talk about that later. But the lot itself is just not conducive to retail. And yes, we could do a special use exception, special use permit. But we were looking at, in the interest of time, looking at a way of trying to get in front of, planning and zoning, trying to get in front of city council and figure out what the best vehicle was in order to make this site work, not just for us, but also for the city. I mean, we want to be community players here. We don't want to sit here and just try to, here, this is what we want to do here, you know, take it or leave it. We want to try to figure out something that's best for all of us. And, you know, as we all know that Mr. Gaddy's is really an eyesore on BK's Road, and I really like to see, you know, your BK's Road eventually start to beautify the north side of the street. You know, the service station is going to be the service station no matter what. The retail north of it, hopefully maybe we can be the catalyst that spurs change. Maybe there's a developer on the fence that's just kind of waiting to maybe take you up on that whole retail idea. Who knows? I mean, it happens. And I mean, I did a lot of work over in Highland Park. And once I did Chase Bank there and Comerica Bank there, boom, right there along Hillcrest, all the retail, all the residential, or all the restaurants, it just started hitting. So, yes, there are pros and cons to having a bank. I completely agree with him, totally, 100%. But there's also pros, and there's also pros. I mean, we're looking at the cons, we're looking at the pros, and there's definitely pros. So, if there's, do I need to present our case? Do I need to state our case, what we're asking for today, or is that later?
You can do that now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine.
So basically, on behalf of Vista Bank, we're requesting a change in the permitted uses within the C2 zoning district of the city of Rollingwood. This application for zoning is basically initiated by the property owners who are out of California on behalf of Vista as well, because currently Vista does not own the property, though we are in current negotiations for the property. We would like to purchase the property. However, if this, if we cannot make this site work, then we're going to have to pull out of the property, out of the conditions of the property. And from my understanding, the previous conversations were any other potential people looking at the property, we're going to be, either banks or offices. So this site is just not conducive to retail, unfortunately, because it's only 6 parking spaces with a dumpster enclosure. That it really is just convoluted. It's just very hard to get into the site and get out of the site. And in being a restaurant, it wouldn't work because there's not enough parking. There's not enough area for sit down dining. And then to be a retail, it had to be a boutique retail, and just you saw what Mr. Gaddy's looked like before. In order to basically enhance the site, make it conform to current code that would change back this last August, September, to conform to current zoning code, to conform to building code, and to be dressed up to make it more like a boutique retail, it's just cost prohibitive. There's no way for it to effectively be able to be successful or viable. So I will now stand down and await questions from everyone.
Cool, thanks.
So, all right, thanks.
I have a question, and I don't know who's should answer it, but my understanding is the request is to amend our zoning ordinances as opposed to a special use permit for this particular bank. And given what we've heard from Tom Farrell, who has served as mayor of the city, it sounds like to me, if you think this property is unsuitable for retail, then a special use permit would make more sense. Just if you want to address that. But
Would you
I
like
mean,
to
we're
address
kind of
what
globally.
I guess
Yeah.
let me try and target a question towards him.
Yeah.
Why did y'all choose to ask for a zoning change to C2 versus seeking a special use permit?
We wanted to go through the special.
Let me rephrase. We have a letter in our packet from the owner saying they're requesting a special use permit. So
That's correct.
if you're willing to kind of give some clarity on that, would be helpful.
Sorry, forgive me. So the reason we chose we'll call it this vehicle, is for the interest of time. Because we have to be able to notify the owners in California on this property on the 20th of this month. So to go through the special use permit process, there's no guarantee we would have an answer before the 20th of this month. Thereby, Vista Bank would have to pull out of negotiations and then possibly lose the deal and escrow money as well. So this was kind of after talking with city staff, and then also confirming with Brian May, the president of the bank, and kind of figuring out the route we needed to go in order to get a decision made, or maybe the feel of the city more or less sooner than later. We chose this route.
Okay. So it was a time consideration.
Correct.
All right.
I just,
Before we get into too much discussion, recall that we're in public conversation. We'll have opportunity to discuss those ideas. Are there any other questions directly for clarification from the applicant?
I have a question. How many staff members in the bank? How many employees?
So there'd be 4 or 5.
And
5.
so-
May I caution the commission
Yep.
not to direct your questions to a specific property when what you have here, the way they've requested it is the entire zoning code.
Yep.
So property-specific questions, it's just kind of an odd way that they've done it, but it
Right.
limits you in what you can consider, because you're considering all properties, not this property.
I understand. He was making reference to a limitation of parking, and I was trying to
Okay.
understand how that would be accommodated, but, okay.
Yeah.
And you can ask questions that lead you to the whole zoning code, and that's not inappropriate. I just wanna make sure that we're really clear. It's kind of a roundabout request, and it's probably something that you don't
I have a question for
see brought this
you.
way that many.
Just about procedurally speaking, I believe we recommend a change to the zoning, but isn't it city council then that has to?
Yes.
So, and that would need to be noticed to city council with 30 days before they could take an action on that. Is that right?
So it isn't published in the paper the same way as the specifics.
Oh, it has. Okay, so they've
They do
already
it at the same time.
got it. I was just, because the
If we
timing
pass
issue
it,
brought
they go
up.
tomorrow.
Got it. Okay.
Sound good?
So
Thanks.
Any other questions directly for the applicant regarding why he thinks we should change all of C2 to include banks?
I guess, my question is, we're being asked to change the zoning ordinances because you all are under a time crunch with your seller, correct?
yeah, more or less, yes.
All right, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead then. Any other comments from the public on this agenda item? All right, hearing none, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn then at 6:26. And commence back into regular session. You wanna take it off?
I'm not gonna make a motion to approve it.
Yep.
How are the existing banks, are they under special use permits? Is that how they're, yeah, off the current 5?
Now, is there an issue where you have to be C1 to get a special use permit for a bank, or can you get a special use permit under C2?
Yeah, the C1, C2 distinctions always confused me too.
Right.
I feel
Well,
like I
and
have
they're
to look at it.
basically the same, almost essentially, but C1, it is permitted to have a bank and savings and loan institution with a special use permit. It is not permitted in C2 zoning, which is what the Gaddy's Pizza site is zoned as.
So there's not a special use permit available for this particular
Right.
zoning classification.
Right.
Okay. So what are the difference between C1 and C2? And now you know the rest of the story.
Thanks, Paul.
I love how I got Mayor Farrell on that one. Okay.
What did we do on the vet clinic that was
We changed all of C1, right?
To include.
all of
To include
C1
all of
to allow
C1
for a
included.
veterinary clinic that
If you recall, I requested we use a special use permit and got shot down mightily, so we have vets running rampant now throughout the
yeah, we're
dogs and cats
living together.
living together all over C1. All right. Any other comments? Josh, come on, chime in. No?
This is squarely within your wheelhouse, brother.
I don't agree with the whole change as a whole.
Yeah. I'm struggling with changing all of C2, to be honest, especially if we know we have C1 out there, we have the means to get a bank. I agree with you that the Gaddy's is a bit of an eyesore, but this is kind of a big change of everything for, in the end, one eyesore. And I suspect that we could look at other means of doing it. I also say, given that we're looking at a comprehensive overview of the entire corridor that may
This is just,
create different zoning, it's like, well, why would we change it now when we're about to look at an entire sort of,
this is exactly where my mind was
Right.
going,
Yeah.
which is, unfortunately for you on the timing issue,
bummer on timing.
it's a bummer.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that. And the C2, C1 distinction, I think we have been continually confused as to why there is a distinction and that maybe those need to be harmonized or like the distinction being abolished or anyway, this all just sort of highlights to me why we need to kind of dig in and restructure what we're doing from a zoning standpoint.
Yeah,
I'm
for
also-
commercial in Rollingwood.
Not clear on how this is a benefit to the community as one of your sort of items that you mentioned, that this would be beneficial, because we've already got 5 banks within Rollingwood, not just Westlake, LMBKs. Sure.
So you have 5 banks here, okay? But there's a difference between banks, like, large banks and community banks, okay? Where Vista is already a community player in Westlake Hills. They're already involved in several different things. And actually, I would like to have James step in and speak to that point. But yes, as a community bank, and yes, to also talk about the loss of sales tax revenue, that if it's not retail, well, the Mr. Gaddy's we're only probably pulling in, we'll say, anywhere between 5 and 10,000 in sales tax. Of course, that's not pulling in anything right now because it's abandoned, but you get that more back, in the community development or the community involvement with the bank than you would, that loss. I mean, in other words, it kind of justifies that small loss of retail tax, if that makes sense, just because they're going to be providing and doing things for the community. So, I'll let James do that.
I think right before you start, I think the larger benefit is just it's a vacant building, whereas this would be a use for it, and presumably there'd be a,
Well, it could be mixed use later on when we rezone it too, you never know.
yeah.
Well, let's leave it in your encouragement. We'll talk about how can banks in C2 help Rollingwood. Your name, sir.
Yeah, James Klingman, Vista Bank. I appreciate y'all having me over here tonight. This is my first time presenting in front of the city council, so don't hold it against me by any stretch. But to answer Tom's question and to the board as well, is that the 5 banks that you do, let's address that first on another community bank coming in Rollingwood on top of the 25 plus banks in Westlake or so. You got BB&T, you got Prosperity, you got Plains Capital, you have our bank, and you have First United Bank. And all of these banks are well in the multiple $billion-dollar asset range, to where Vista Bank is going to be more in line with your our bank, bank that you have in town as far as asset size. We're well below $1 billion in assets, what allows us to directly get more involved with our credit products and banking our clients within its given market. So we'll provide dollars and lending structures for those money to come back into the community, not only supporting the existing businesses and towns, but also, I would say about 40 to 50% of our client base right now resides in the city of Rollingwood and Westlake itself. We recently have brought on a mortgage product, which is a portfolio product, which allows us for our higher net worth individuals that can't really show on paper that they qualify for a JP Morgan Chase or big bank mortgage product to come in and be able to lend to those individuals and into these dollar amounts of the homes that you guys are purchasing here. So that's one avenue on top of supporting the local businesses in town. Our market president sits on the Eanes Education Foundation board, an executive on that board. His kids are enrolled in the schools here, and he's a very involved in the community itself of Rollingwood, and his kids I believe are in the elementary school here between Rollingwood and Westlake. So we are ready to step up to invest dollars in the community by way of sponsorships, by way of charities, and just community investment in general for the bank. So that's what we would like to provide to the community. That's what we're ready to provide to the community, and what our competition, how we stand against our competition in the market. We are a true community partner, and ready to look at all avenues that we're able to help open the doors or look into for your community, for sure. So I really appreciate the time and those questions, because they're very valid questions. And after discussing with Brian as well, is Rollingwood does need retail. There's no doubt about it. He recently built a home right over off of Reveille, I believe right next to Texas Honeyham. So he wants to see more investment in the community, which again, we would be able to help lend and be supportive and be a primary lender for the businesses looking in and or the developers looking in to build out additional space here in Westlake. And we do have quite a bit of developers that are clients that reside in the community as well. And then looking at the actual property in general, if you do take a look at the most viable space for that location to redevelop, if that seller was willing to, it's really nice to have an end cap shiny presence there to help spur what your ultimate goal is and to revitalize that strip of bee caves. So, but I appreciate the time.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Jamil, anything?
This is an easy one for me. I think if you guys were coming in asking for a special use permit on a C1 property, it would be, I think, a little bit, I don't know where I would reside or land, but it'd be a little harder thought process. But I just don't, I don't understand why we would modify our C2 to allow banks, which is 180 degrees from, I think, where we need to go in terms of creating a mixed-use district along Bee Cave and try to create some energy.
Okay, thanks, Jamil. Any other further comments from the dais on anyone?
Appreciate you coming in. It
Yeah.
obviously seems like an
Really do.
incredible, relationship you guys have with your community, and it's a great business, and there's no sort of negative thoughts about that. It's simply just, it's a big ask to change the code, in my opinion. And as Jamil said, it's, it might have been different on a special use situation, but given sort of what we're trying to do in a more global and comprehensive way, to me, it makes sense to kind of correct that first and then try that plan, and see how that can, maybe you all can fit into that as we go forward. Just right now, for changing C2 doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Okay. Is there anybody who'd like to make a motion either way?
I think if there's no motion, we just stay as we are. And I think, I appreciate you all coming. I'm sure the bank is a good community partner, but I just have concerns about somebody saying our seller is giving us a deadline and therefore we should change an entire ordinance. And also Mayor Dyson was just here talking about the entire corridor plan. And I would want to hear more about, how that would fit in or not fit into a corridor plan, because certainly I think we would like to see higher quality retail along that corridor. So thank you for coming. But I personally don't see how I could vote to change the ordinance.
All right, well, hearing no motion, then no action is taken.
No action.
Okay, thank you. That concludes regular agenda item number 4. We're going to move into 5, which would be a briefing regarding what's been done by the council regarding some of the actions we've taken. As you guys will recall, we're trying to start making this a standing item just to keep us, to create feedback loops. Goes from us to council. We want to know what happened at council.
Sure,
Take it away.
There's an update for you in the packet.
Yep.
Let me see if I can pull it up here. Oops.
It's right before
Okay,
the
there we go.
community plan, I think.
Yeah. I got page 17 on mine.
Okay.
There it is.
I know, I don't.
Sorry.
Okay,
Computers.
just to let you know.
Just playing pong with the recommendations here.
The council did approve the plat application at 2514 Rollingwood Drive, and by the time it came to council, they had made all the modifications that you had recommended approval, pending those modifications made to
Okay.
the plat. So those were done. All the P&Z members were confirmed by the council, so that went to the council to see if they wanted to confirm you renewing your next 2-year term, and those were all confirmed. What didn't come in front of you was a sign variance for Well Sky at 2500 Bee Caves Road, and it didn't come before planning and zoning because there's a special sign variance process that says any variance to the sign ordinances will go directly before council. But I thought it was important that you all know this just in case you might want to start looking at some of our sign ordinances are a little out of date. I think they refer to some fluorescent neon lighting. Also, this backlit sign was appropriate for the size of the building, but I think we have a limit in there of 30 inches, and so it's on this side of the Endeavor building, and it was replacing what was there, and so it was appropriate for what was there. So it might be something in the future we want to look at, and especially when we go through our comprehensive and plan and commercial corridor process. That could be a pain point when we're trying to attract retail and other development. Is, what do our sign ordinances look like, and are they painful for developers to come in and develop to?
I was hoping it was a sign ordinance to get rid of that speed limit sign with the fake speed limit on it, but, oh well.
No, sir.
The one as you come in on Rollingwood?
By Tony's
by
house?
McDonald's? Yeah, by Tony's house, yeah. Anywho, I'm gonna put that on next week's agenda.
Too fast.
Sorry, go ahead.
The commercial corridor task force meetings will be set up soon. We were trying to make it through the holiday vacation times, and so we're anxious to get those set up soon. Hours of construction technically is a building ordinance, so it did not come before you all, but I know that you've had discussions about hours of construction, so I thought it was important to bring this up to you. There were some inconsistencies in the code where it said federal holidays and then one place where it said city holidays, and so we amended it to say there's no construction on city holidays, just because we won't have any city staff here to address any complaints, and it's not that much different than federal holidays.
Is that federal and city holidays, or just city holidays?
Well, city holidays include all of the
Yeah.
federal
Include all
holidays.
federal holidays? Okay.
Yes, and then the city has a few extra holidays.
But that's
There you
kind of
go.
confusing, because I know at Christmas, which was on a Wednesday, you guys were closed on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yes.
And people wanted to work on Monday, but they couldn't. So is this done? Is this like the new rule?
It's building, so it's chapter
3.
3? Chapter 3. It's chapter 3,
Oh,
so
we're
not
fine.
within our purview. The
Okay.
specific days in which you can go, we can look at it from a zoning perspective in 14, but, yeah. I guess if you have issues on it, you should seek city council, unless you want to bring it here for some reason, but we would have to ask city council to allow us to look into it.
Yes.
We could say whatever we want to say, but generally they're gonna be like, hey, thanks, but that's not your,
Right.
Correct.
that's your
I'll
chapter.
join you.
I think it's confusing to people because people are kind of anticipating these major holidays, and then guys are ready to work and they can't, so
Sure.
it's not your problem.
And I would say
Sure.
a calendar of those things that's public, and that's easy to know, so people can go to it and be like, these are the days for project management would be very helpful.
We could definitely add that to the community calendar. And I think because there were two places where it was inconsistent, one said federal, one said city, they went ahead and went with the city, but that's not saying that the council wouldn't take up, what you're talking about is to modify, to allow for more construction, maybe some light construction on the inside or something during the city holidays. So they were just more or less doing it to make it consistent, but just know I think they'd still be open to hearing that conversation. And then we are working through our ordinances to remove masonry requirements because the state passed legislation that said that the cities could no longer dictate what kind of building materials you use. And so we're just working through our ordinances to make sure we're cleaning those up too. Any questions?
So an HOA could do that, but not a city.
Right.
Is it just our kind of city or any city?
Any city.
Any city. Well, we're not making this city an HOA, I can tell you that much right now, so.
I'm interested in so was this, well, I'll ask somebody else.
Yeah.
I can.
I wanna see the
assist you
case.
with that. It's not a case. It was legislation.
Oh, it was legislated?
And it was,
Like local city government code?
yes, and TML had so much opposition to this, and they spoke against it, and it was one of the huge things that the TML was really against. and
Remember what
every-
TML is?
Texas.
Texas League,
League.
who represents all of the
Yep,
cities,
yep.
and
So the
there's,
state wants to tell us what
yeah,
we can,
exactly, it was
No,
one
the
of the.
state's telling you,
really-
you can't
Yeah.
deny certain materials.
Yeah, one of the
Yeah.
really overreaching things that the legislature did in that session. There's
You on
very
record
few
for that's an
exceptions.
overreach there?
On record. There are a lot of things they did to municipalities, but there's very few exceptions. I mean, if you have a development agreement in your ETJ, maybe, but, I mean, it really took away, you can't say no stucco or only stucco, or it's really restricted.
What happened to local control?
It's gone. In this respect, it is gone.
I really appreciate this agenda item for what it's worth. This was
Yeah.
really nice to get to hear how things develop after they leave our purview. And additional things that are bubbling up. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amber.
All right, that concludes item number 5. Item number 6, discussion on new member recruitment. Do we have an open seat? We're kind of running out of them up here.
Stein's still.
We're
Right?
big with Stein, right? We're
Yeah.
full. We're full. All right, that takes care of item number 6.
I don't know.
I wanted to say thanks to everybody who's. Pardon? Did we skip 4? No. 4 was.
We're good. You're good.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, I did. I got missed.
Nope,
missed
no,
it.
you're fine.
You're good?
No, 4 was discussion on
Oh.
planning for future meeting dates and agenda items. Sorry about that. That is a formatting issue for me. 4, is there anything we have to present on item number 4? Did we have it in here? I didn't see anything in the packet on it. We weren't supposed to be in January. We're here. Does that mean we get, meeting to skip to be named later? Is that kind of one of those player to be named later deals? Does anybody have a particular month they just want to skip? No.
March.
We weren't supposed to be here.
Well, March
Amy,
is spring
can I-
break, but
Yeah. Can I
So
put,
I'll figure out.
I want to say thank you for your email to it may have been to the commission or to everybody who said, I signed up to do it these days. These are the days that I can do, so let's try and keep it to these days.
I
This was a
appreciate
special
that.
meeting. And I will echo her comments of, we're all very, very busy. Y'all are lucky you got me here by 7. I got here by 6 because I was ready to come marching in at 7 and miss the meeting just because when we switch them, it's hard for us to get out of our habits. So, we've heard you and we will do our best.
I have a sacred duty on Tuesday nights, which is movie night with our niece, our nephew and his girlfriend and our kids, and we've been doing it for 5 years.
Fantastic.
Movie night is sacred.
Where are we going?
You can come over, but you have to bring popcorn.
Popcorn, I love it. All right, so generally, guys, we now go into February, March, April, May, June, correct? We don't have July and August. Was that the deal? Remind me of the calendar real quick. Sorry to put y'all on the spot. If you don't, I don't remember it. If you guys, I know it's in here. So June, July, and August we have taken off because we're just having trouble getting anybody from the community in here for some of the stuff we were tackling, as well as we were having a lot of meetings with just 4 of us to make quorum.
Well, I had March 4th on my calendar, which is a Wednesday for
Yep.
P&Z, and then I got another notice it was canceled. Are we gonna keep some meetings on the calendar?
Yeah, what's
just
up with
to
all the
see if we
cancellation
have
notices there, Chief?
Items on the agenda?
They were all under Amber's email. I needed to take over all of the agendas, or all of the meetings, so we had to cancel hers and send out mine. So mine should be on your calendar now unless they were declined. But I have left every single meeting, even on those months we aren't supposed to meet, because if we have to meet, that's a date y'all have all kind of said you could, maybe be there. And
Yeah,
this one
I
was very
agree.
special, we would have been meeting on New Year's Eve.
So it's not so much that we're not meeting; it's optional.
If
and,
if the commission wants to talk about
Well,
something.
it's saving that time if something comes up and we do have to do something, which I agree with. March 4th is fine with me. I don't know if we had anything scheduled for February. Yeah, we did have
Yep,
February
it is.
5th, March 4th.
Still scheduled.
Yeah, April 1st. All of those, when I signed on, those were the kind of dates I signed on to do, so that's fine.
Right, and we did cancel January, and then we talked about it last month, that we just had to have this meeting, so, and we were just lucky to get a quorum when we got more, so we
Great.
appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Okay, well, generally speaking, we're going into regular session for the next 4 or 5 months. So a lot of time right now to get work done on some of our comprehensive plans. So let's switch over to talk about the comprehensive plan, unless there's any other questions on the calendar. Hearing none, then we'll go back to item 7, which is an update on the status of the comprehensive plan. Into the microphone, ma'am, please. Thank you.
The RFQ was issued and published in the Statesman and the Picayune, also our website and the TML website. We have not received any responses yet, but they are not due until the 23rd. It would be our hope that as soon as we get those in, we can distribute to you all. We would like to have the responses come and present to you so you could make a recommendation to the city council. I envision this commission leading the charge in the comprehensive planning process, and so I think it'd be important that you were all comfortable with whoever firm you decided to choose. So that would be.
I'll also say in the packet we added intentionally the older. So you guys have been bombarded the last 2 months with these corridor studies. The one from 90. Sorry, let me pull it up. I think it was 98, 99, 99, and then the most recent one. Lots of great data. I won't call it homework. But if you're having trouble sleeping, rather than watch this meeting again, go back to the corridor study and take a look at it, because there's a lot of great information in there. And that's what this group that's going to be meeting on the corridor study are going to be looking at. But we're bigger than the corridor study. We're talking about a comprehensive plan for all of Rollingwood, which will also include what do we want to do in single family, which is our largest zoning district. And so the changes that we make or don't make are going to guide the types of behaviors and the way we, not behaviors, but the way we engage with our real estate for the next couple of decades. It seems like these things go for about a couple decades and then there'll be a big push again. So I'll say this, the corridor study is a great place to get started for the commercial side of it, because we generally keep our, almost all of our commercial is over in the corridor. What we need help with from consultants is what do we want to do with single family. And so that will be helpful for them to be coming in as well. Anything else I need to update on that? Does anybody want the RFQ? I mean, you could probably track it down online. Do you guys want us to stick it in a packet or an email for you guys to have the opportunity to look at?
We'll make sure it's in your next packet
Okay.
for when you interview the firms.
Great.
It's ready for you.
Okay. What's your time frame on interviews? Are you thinking February meeting or March?
February meeting.
Okay. Okay, great.
The meeting will be an interview?
Yeah, discussion, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we'll ask them to leave. That's how we do it for the council meetings. They come up, present, you are able to ask questions, and then we ask them to leave so that way you can deliberate.
Okay.
Still a public meeting.
It is, but
Just
they-
less awkward.
that's
We're
right.
talking
It's
about
less
it in
awkward
front.
for y'all, and
They could
and
log in from their laptop. in the
This is
parking lot.
true. They could literally watch you on your phone, on their phone when they leave. So.
Might need to yank the camera cord that day. All right. Well, there's nothing else on our agenda. So you guys, thank you. Appreciate y'all being here. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I was so moved.
All in
Second.
favor, say aye.